asking, you were born in Mexico. I don't know if everybody knows that, but now the secret's out, if it was a secret. And I think it might be interesting for people to hear, what was it like growing up in Mexico?
It was wonderful. My country is absolutely a wonderful place. You know, it has an incredible culture and incredible people. I was born in the late 60s in Mexico, so no problem dating myself. That is absolutely not a problem. And it was a country that was kind of getting into some kind of a young adulthood at that time. I was born the year that the Olympic Games in Mexico City happened. They happened without any problem, without any political hiccup, seamlessly. So the eyes were on our country. And some other things happened afterwards, but I won't get into that. However, I was basically a very happy kid. I always say that I am the child of biology and physics, because my mom was a biologist and everything okay? Yeah. My mom was a biologist and my father was a physicist. So I was born in a household of science and knowledge. Both of them were teachers. Both of them were very academicians, and they were very involved in let's say in intellectual and knowledge groups of Mexico. Mm-hmm. So it was a happy childhood, and inevitably I have to mention that it was since the beginning quite an olfactive.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, when you were growing up as a young child in Mexico, what did your peer group, all of your friends, make of this young boy who was fascinated by smells? What were they doing, and what did they make of you?
Well, listen, it was kind of a difficult package to handle. I was, since I was a kid, a big mouth, very opinionated. I was a straight A student, which drove people crazy. I was the guy, you know, raising his hand in the class. Teachers in general found me endearing and verging on the unbearable, but that was a good combination if I deliver good results.
So nothing has changed.
Yes, nothing has changed. Yes. So true to nature. I also have a very enormous pride in my life, is that I went to the same school since the age of 4 till the age of 20. And this begat something that is for me one of the treasures of my life, an enormously rich and very varied group of friends. We went together to school, boys and girls, from the age of 4, like I said, to the age of 20. So the boys married the girls, etc. I have been witness of, you know, signing marriage as a witness for most of them, and we still are friends. So this is many years later. So, and they always say, you know, you're exactly like you are now. Now you don't have hair, but that's exactly what it is. It's still our Rodrigo. At home they call me Pico, so oh, Pico just talked, you know, and blah blah blah. So,
well, I've not known you for that long, but you haven't changed really in all the time.
Thank you. I'm a little bit less slim.
Which means there's more of you to love, Rodrigo. It's very simple. So what age were you when you left Mexico to go to Paris?
Oh, well, that's a little bit of a quantum leap, because I had finished high school. It's a combination a little bit of high school and college, and then what is real college is, we call it university. So I had started studying my university studies in biology. That was at the age of 2021, etc. So I moved to France to study perfumery. I want to say around my 22nd birthday, around there. So the entire time, till the age of my early 20s, I lived, and you know, I grew up in Mexico City, and then I applied to the International Superior Institute of Perfumery, Cosmetics, and Flavorings, the famous ISIPCA in Versailles, got accepted, and landed in France in September 1989. Very untimely, as always, on my part, because it was basically 2 months after the big celebration of the French bicentennial. But that's the way it was.
And so what was ISIPCA like? So there you were, you'd left Mexico, you've gone to Paris, you have the dream to be a perfumer, and you're in ISIPCA. What was it like?
First of all, in general, just before talking about ISIPCA a little bit, there was an interesting language hiccup, not a barrier, because I knew how to speak French. During my teenagers years, I studied French and learned how to speak French in the Alliance Française in Mexico City. However, let's call my French a little bit too literal, too Victor Hugo kind of thing, and I knew zero of their slang, which, as you know, it's called argot. So it was tough for me, like, for example, instead of saying things or stuff, they use the word truc, which means trick. So said truc, and I was like, why are French always talking about magic? Are they magicians? What happens here? So it was difficult to dive in. Second, the group of perfumery students, we were 15 or 16. There were two guys from Algeria. There was a German guy. Then there was me, the Mexican, and there was a Swiss girl, and everybody else was French, and it was very, very French. So a lot of people looked at me like a menace. Oh my God, the invasion of Latin America is here. He's going to steal our jobs. The French are very, 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 very proud of their culture and their nation. So it was interesting and a little bit difficult, a little bit challenging. However, they were always kind of, wow, your French is very good. And also they were wondering about my second last name, because I am indeed French as well. My mom was half French. She was born in Mexico. My maternal grandfather was actually not only French, he was Provençal. So there you have it.
So was Izipka how you imagined it would be? Did you have an idea in your mind? And
I knew more or less the curriculum, the program, and Izipka was a school that wanted to be a lot of things at that time. For example, they were giving classes of, English classes, and I actually learned how to write and read first in English and in Spanish in Mexico. So I had to go through a little bit of a formality in order to demonstrate that my English was basically seamless. I keep my accent because of personal reasons, but I had to go and do an exam on English, and it's because I didn't come to France to study English. There was also another class of notions. At that time, there was no European Union. There was a European community. Mm-hmm. So notions of right for the formation of the European community. So we had this absolutely chic but very aloof lady lawyer giving us law classes, and it was like, what the hell? I'm here to smell stuff and to talk about perfume. I don't want to know about obligations and law, etc., etc. So it was touching very, very, very primary chemistry classes, which we have done in our curriculum in Mexican biology year and the year one, etc. So little by little, yet again, I started to be a little bit rebellious, and I talked to the director several times. So I was exempted from the English classes, and I was also exempted a little bit at the end from the chemistry classes. And guess what? Where did I spend my time? In the lab, doing what one do as a perfume, mixing stuff, mixing truc. Meanwhile, my other colleagues, the poor ones, were going to English lessons. The cat is fat and all of that, and I knew that the cat was fat already. So I spent my free time literally doodling in the lab, and that absolutely gave me enormous advantage and an enormous richness in self-teaching.
So when you left Izipka and you started working, beginning of your commercial role, what was the first commercial success you had? Or no, the first commercial contract you won?
To get to that question, I'm just going to cut back a little bit, because I graduated from Izipka in 1991, which was a very, very important year for in history in general, but particularly for the history of the industry of the perfumery, because it was the year where kind of the Gulf War, the Allied countries went against Iraq because of their invasion of Kuwait happened. So France was in state of war because France followed the United States in that let's call it skirmish. And so we were a little bit in a strange état de guerre lockdown, if you will, but still we were going to the school, etc. I was able to find myself in an internship, in a traineeship at what used to be at that time Givaudan, with the head perfumer at that time, which was his a gentleman by the name of Jean-Claude Elena. I think everybody knows that name. You know, now he was 14 years the house perfumer at Hermes. And so I trained under Jean-Claude Elena. He mentored me for that particular period in school that everybody had to leave the classrooms and go to a company and find yourself in the industry. So it was wonderful to be an intern at Givaudan, because also they paid me and I was not expecting to get a paycheck. So that was wonderful. But anyway, just to tell you that then the graduation time comes, and in that week, exactly the week that the graduation is going to happen, my father and my siblings are visiting Paris for that, etc. Boom. Hoffman Laroche, who was the owner of Givaudan, and then the smaller but very prestigious perfume house Roux, they decided to merge the two companies. Mm-hmm. So my class graduated exactly at the time that two very important perfume houses merged. So there was absolutely no market, no job offerings at all in France. I wanted to stay in Paris, and it was basically impossible. Nobody, people actually were getting laid off. So at that time, I had been in touch with a gentleman who was the general manager of IFF in Mexico, International Flavors and Fragrances in Mexico City. And he told me, you know what, you have the blues, leave the French alone, come back. So he convinced me to come back to Mexico. He interviewed me a couple of times. I could tell enormous stories about him. He was a wonderful, wonderful man from Argentina. And he hired me as a junior perfumer back in August 1991. So suddenly, boom, I have an office, I have a writing pad, some people could work with me in the lab, and okay, you're a perfumer, do your thing. And to answer your question, which is a funny and cheeky answer, very, very soon thereafter, after my first day at work, the sales manager there is a gentleman by the name Humberto Campos, with whom we're still good friends. He comes to see me and he tells me, listen, have you worked on anything that is related to, it's a very famous Spanish soap called Heno de Pravia, like a Spanish hay, a fougere smell. Have you worked on that kind of thing? I said, well, no, not exactly, but I know how it's done, etc. Can you make me something that smells like that? He gave me 3 cents to work with, of course. I have always have problem with the money there, the prices of fragrances, and said, and okay, for what application? Thing that is cosmetic application. So be mindful about doing a very, very dark oil, etc., etc. So I just concocted something. It was lavender, a little bit of coumarin, geranium, some citrusy notes, a touch of spice. And off he goes and presents it to this company, this new company. I knew it was something that had to do something with pharmacies. Anyway, so maybe like two weeks later, he comes running into my office with his very, very big laugh. And he's really laughing. Guess what? You sold your first fragrance ever. And I go, hey, this is wonderful. So, but what is it? Okay, so now I'm going to explain it to you because it was confidential. This fragrance is going to be the scent for a very, very special shampoo. Oh, okay. Shampoo is great. And it's a medicated shampoo that is going to be called Novo Hair Clean 2000, new product in the market. Okay. And it is a shampoo that is medicated, and it will be used in order to eliminate parasites of the pubic hair.
Sorry, that's just too perfect.
So like a friend of mine now says, oh my God, since that day, Rodrigo has kept his head in the gutter and he cannot take his head out. And I said, okay, I'll oblige. I like that. So this is completely true. That is the first fragrance I sold. It is very far from Guerlain.
So my next question is, how did that make you feel?
Extremely proud. Absolutely proud. Well, first of all, it was my first sale no matter what. And yes, second, here we go, another connection with sex. It's just like...
Well, look, one thing that I know very well about you is that you have the most extraordinary wealth of knowledge of classical perfumery. But I also know that one of the things which I would say that you're very famous for is forging the future of perfumery through your creations. That you're not somebody, in my opinion, who is in the least retrospective, but I think you have a great understanding and acknowledgement of past creations, but always looking to the future. So how do you use your knowledge of the past? Do you use your knowledge of the past when you're creating?
I actually do use it, and I use it enormously. You know, when I was a teenager and we had history classes, something that I always kind of agreed and liked about the stories, like you have to know what happened before. You have to know history in order to understand what's happening in the present, and in order to work for the future. Right. And that is a precept. You know, my history teachers, my Mrs. Lola, who was this Spanish lady that was extraordinary, and she taught us about Napoleon and the Renaissance and, you know, all these things. And she always said, like, we have to understand the past, but not dwell in it, and that is very important. So if you ask me right now, can you make me a Fleur de Rocaille by Caron? I can, you know, doodle and make you something, but what's the case? What's the point? So I think you have to understand very clear what is behind you, what happened behind you, in order to kind of set your mind in the present and to do something in the future. I don't want to sound pretentious, but for me, I think a very, very fantastic example of this particular approach to the creative process is Pablo Picasso. And in particular, and I just saw it on this December the 31st, a painting that absolutely excites me enormously is Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Mm-hmm. Because with that canvas in 1906 or whenever, you know, Picasso painted, in that canvas, Picasso invented the 20th century. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at it on the left side, there's something happening, and he's kind of approaching cubism, but there's already, you know, very clear, but at the same time very shaded references to romantic art, to Courbet, to Corot, to realism. And then the more he's advancing towards the right of the painting, the more abstract, the more cubistic it gets. And then the references to African art, to Polynesian art are just so clear. And then it becomes a mishmash at the same time in your face, and voila. The man invented the 20th century. However, he could not have done it, like I said, without the Romantics. He could not have done it without taking a very close look to Paul Cézanne. So for me, you know, that is one thing. I have been called a neoclassicist. I have been called a Baroque. I had also been called at the same of a brutalist. So I take those as compliments because, you know, it shows that I can be as excited in the Sistine Chapel as in Falling Water House built by Frank Lloyd Wright, and I like approaching my creative ethos exactly like that. Okay, this brief calls precisely for the Baldacchino of Bernini in St. Peter's, and this other brief is talking to me about a Steichen photography of fashion of the 1940s. Oh. And that's the way to do it.
Yeah. And I know that you have an enormous love of white flowers. I know that you love leathers. We're going to talk about that all in a while. Yes. But I also know, I didn't know this, I learned this, when I was reading ahead of this, I didn't know that you are anosmic to certain musks.
Yes, I am.
And so how does that make you approach this area of perfumery? If you want to use musks, do you avoid them? Do you use your technical knowledge to use them? How do you approach using them?
It's, you know, it comes with a craft, it comes with practice, but it is true. There's many musks, many that, you know, if I dip a blotter in that bottle, for, you know, namely, you know, one of the most widely used now, which is called Galaxolite, pretty name. For me, it's not only I don't smell it, for me, it's a little bit of the anti-odor. I get like a void, and it has become. But what I was studying perfumery, for me, was almost like an emotional emptiness, because everybody would, oh, it smells great, it smells clean, it smells sexy, it smells dead. And I was like, I don't smell a thing. So moths are also very strange animals, because if you put several of them together, energies, effects in a perfume. So that's where, even if you're anosmic to moths, you can use them and you can, you know, evaluate what happens. It would be, if this would be possible, if you would be a specific kind of color blind and you wouldn't see blue, and you're a painter, you know, at the end, you learn how to use blue in order to work in your composition. Yeah. And it's more or less that. So I know some combinations that work for what I'm doing. Sometimes some people, oh my God, you overdose the most here. They will, okay, perfect. If it works, etc. Because also in perfumery, one of the very, very important golden rules is like the sum is 10 million times better than the parts. Always. That's very important.
Yeah. And I also so there are two main things that I've read. One was that, and the other one was something I actually know about you as somebody I'd like to call a friend, that when you can go wild, you get excited. Now, this particular quote was to do with perfumery. So in what way, what stimulates you, that makes you go wild, that you do become really excited when you're making perfume?
Well, there's two things to that. One of them, I approach my work with enthusiasm, and I know I have to be enthusiastic and at the same time with happiness, and I approach it like that, full-heartedly and very frontally. But at the same time, it is very interesting to know that when you mix the first, sketch for a perfume, you will always love it, and you will always be kind of, yes, even enamored with it. And that is an enormous danger. Edmond Rurniscada, creator of Eau Sauvage, we would say you have to be very wary, very suspicious of the easy accord. L'accord facile, he would call it, because then you're stuck. So even if I love the first thing I do, I really try to do, no, maybe I need to take out one part, or maybe I need to completely change the proportion of the three parts that I'm using, etc. Mentioning Picasso again, and then this is very Picassoian. He wrote one day that when you're particularly happy with one specific part of your canvas, and you're particularly happy with it, you have to cover it in white and forget about it, because it's really distracting you to see the entire thing. So it's like the trees or the forest. And it is true that you can get stuck, and that excites you, but it excites you in the wrong way. What is really exciting is the challenge, like, okay, I'm going to be like Picasso, and I love the rose in this perfume. I'm going to eliminate it, and let's see what happens.
That's fascinating. If I think of some of the very big successes of yours, Clinique Happy, or Neroli Portofino, or something like A Hidden Fantasy, Britney Spears.
Oh, yes.
Sitting here. There are, I believe, in one way, a far cry from your personal taste, which is to do with much richer, deeper, dirtier smells almost. What discipline do you use? How do you approach making these types of perfumes that need to fit a very particular brief or idea that you have or you've been given? How do you manage the thing of being able to remove your personal taste when creating?
It's a question with.
I beg your pardon. Whilst it's still very much a Rodrigo product.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, but it's a double faced, like a Janus kind of approach, because first of all, yes, I like rich and opulent and very evocative and conversational pieces, but also I can ricochet to some things that are light and simple. People call me Baroque, but at the same time, I am perfectly capable, and have had quite success with writing very succinct and very brutally sincere formulas where there's not one single element that is too much. But for me, one of the big important mantras is it could be a project for the most exquisite and the most exclusive fashion designer in Paris, or it could be something for a very, very crazy celebrity or male, female, etc., etc. I have a mantra in my life. I will not present a fragrance if I don't love it, because of many reasons. First of all, it's self-indulgence. I really need to love, what I'm doing it. Otherwise, what's the point? But also the way this industry works, and curiously, I was talking to a journalist yesterday about this. The way this industry works is like, you know perfectly well that there will be a process of development and creation of the perfume. A perfume is very, 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 very rarely good at the first time. Again, the easy accord, be very, very suspicious of it. You are going to be stuck working on something that you like so, or that you don't like for 10 years. not 10 years, sorry, 10 months, not 10 years. Oof, no, that hasn't happened yet, but anyway. Some perfumers do it, and it's fine, and I respect that. It's absolutely not a criticism, but I have to be a little bit Pygmalion-y in my approach. I have to love what I do, and that's why it's a very, very important principle of my working ethos is like, if I don't like a perfume, I don't show it to the evaluators, I don't show it to the client, I don't consider it. And that's when you get excited.
And what type of materials do you find are the most challenging to work with?
I happen to be not an enormous fan of sweet burnt things. And people are going to be, oh my God, the gourmand perfumes are so big. Well, first of all, you can do gourmand perfumes in other kind of gourmandise, but I am extremely sensitive to those caramel molecules, to ethyl maltol, maltol, and praline notes. It's not something I like. Of course, I use them, but some of my colleagues, they go crazy with the dosages of this raw material. I am more discreet in that. Again, it's a question of signature. However, they're important, and they're very, very important in some of the perfumes that I've made that are out there. So for me, burnt sweet is complicated. That's why I don't really touch Immortelle Everlasting Absolute, because it has that bouillon touching on sweet, touching of digestion thing that I am not fan. Yeah. It is something that I don't enjoy. I don't mind having food with a lot of cumin. I actually enjoy the smell of cumin, but I have learned in my almost, it's going to be this year, 30 years of career, that I am very bad at dosing cumin, so I stay away from cumin. Some perfumers use it in every single perfume to great effects. You know, it's but there's other things that even with my eyes are closed and I can dose them up and down, etc., etc. For example, animalic notes, I absolutely love them. I do like the dirty part of perfume, and you would be surprised if I would tell the amount of indole or the amount of a civet-like smell in these perfumes. The numerical amount is extremely high, and people have really never said like, "Oh, it's too dirty. Oh, it's too indolic," etc. Unless there's somebody who is very sensitive to that.
I remember once you and I sitting in a bar having a glass of champagne. Might have been a bottle actually.
Essex House.
Essex House. Yeah. Talking about if the people in the room really could smell the civet in the base of Jicky. They'd all be shocked.
Yeah. You were wearing Jicky, and Jicky is, as you know, is civet galore. And I absolutely adore that perfume. And it's like, we were saying, can you imagine if these guys knew what's in there, you know? And civet is actually kind of easy to use, if you ask me.
So with the thing of, in your work, being challenged, what is the appeal of being challenged? You know, when you're creating something which maybe is where the brief or the idea is outside of your natural comfort zone, so you're having to use other disciplines, maybe it isn't quite as natural, I don't know if that's right or wrong. What's the appeal of that to you?
Well, you know, the challenge is always there. And also because you have this, you know, personal insight pressure of, I'm going to win this project. And at the same time, of course, you have the pressure from the industry, the companies, and so on, you know. You are, at the end, I'm an employee. so you know, the challenge is always there, because the challenge is how to put your thinking cap in order to respond personally and with your own taste and your own manière to a specific brief that might be not the most interesting or the most appealing or the most you know, cutting edge. Not everything has to be cutting edge, you know. You can do things that are very nice, very commercial, very pleasing, that are going to be crazy, you know, testers and so on. But so the challenge is to get, okay, if you know this brief is calling for this and this and this and this characteristics, I am certain tone deaf. And talking about deafness, you know, there's a very important thing, and I always repeat it, that the most important part of the anatomy of a perfumer is not the nose, it is the ears. A perfumer has to have a PhD in listening. When a perfumer doesn't listening, he's alone. because you have to listen to the client, you have to listen to the market, you have to listen to what's happening out there, you have to watch the news, you have to do a lot of things, you have to do personal research. And when research is known, it shows. That is very, very important. And also, you know, things that are very evident. If the client is telling you, you know, it's very vanilla, can you lower the vanilla? And you decide not to lower the vanilla, you're getting nowhere, you know. Because perfumers, I compare perfumers a little bit to the first violin in the orchestra, if you will. But the orchestra is what counts. And of course, the gentleman in front of you, you know, doing like that, Daniel Barenboim, counts enormously as well, you know.
Yeah, especially if they're paying the bill.
Yeah, there you go.
And so when you put all of your passion, which I know is enormous, and your creative skill, which is also enormous, into whatever it is you're working on, then you go and present it to your client, and the client absolutely dislikes it. Not slightly, they just hate it. How does it make you feel? Does it fire you up? Does it inspire you to do something even better? What happens? How do you feel?
There's a collection of feelings. You know, first of all, I am convinced that perfumers are a little bit masochistic. You know, it's like, because this business, unfortunately, is 99% disappointment and 1% orgasmic glory. And that's the way it works, you know, because you cannot win every single project.
Of course.
Now, when you are extremely convinced, or even again enamored with what you're going to show, and the response of the client is not very positive or actually negative, you feel extremely disappointed. You feel that you have been let down, or you can be a little bit, you know, elegantly spiteful, and you just kind of shrug it off and you say it was clearly not for them, or they don't understand it. I have the privilege and the honor to work with clients that not only are enormously talented in leading the orchestra, let's call it, but are also, I've been working with them, I have a history with them. Yep. So if a particular client absolutely hates peach, to say something, I'm not mentioning anyone, but I am not going to be showing this person a peach. You know, so again, you have to be listening to the rustle of the leaves of the tree every single moment of the day as a perfumer. That is one of the most important things. We are radars, we're sponges, we are Wikipedias, and that's the job.
Yeah, and I know that I don't know how many, but I know that some of the creations, you've worked with collaboratively with other perfumers.
Yeah.
So I was intrigued to know, what does that bring you? So what are the positives of working with another perfumer on a project, or perfumers, and what are the negatives of it? And who was the first perfumer you worked with collaboratively on a perfume, and what was it?
Collaboratively, for me, it's very, you know, it is also something that was kind of a keystone, like the before and after in my life. It was Clinique Happy, and I co-created that perfume with Jean-Claude Delville, an incredibly accomplished perfumer who has an enormously amount of taste and also vision in order to kind of compact the messages and read them in a way that sometimes I'm not capable of. That was a labor of love. It was very complex, complicated, long project, etc. But I have to say, you know, basically the first fragrance that I did internationally is a fragrance that I co-signed. And I am now, you know, let's say almost 30 years proud of it, you know. But teamwork happens to me very naturally. I am very, you know, there are perfumers who are very possessive and they're very close to their formulas, so they don't want to share. That's fine. I am somebody who's like, okay, you know, you had that really fantastic gardenia chord, etc. You know, a little conversation with a colleague, take it and let's see. And then the day after, you know, I need your green pimento, you know, kind of thing. Or then suddenly we're put together because of many things, political decisions, or the client wants you to do a duo between France and the United States. And those things happen organically. I enjoy looking at a formula with another colleague because you see things that you don't see, you know. Sometimes you're just looking, you're in the room of a museum and then your canvas is enthralled with the canvas, but also the frame is amazing and you're kind of missing it, you know. So, or vice versa, you know, so that's, oh my God, the frame is fantastic, you know, so those things, it gives me enormous pleasure not to be a perfume that I think I share, and I think I welcome sharing, and feedback is important. And sometimes, you know, as a perfumer, you get called at the end, and you know, the paternity dash maternity of a perfume, of a perfume, it can be discussed, but at the same time, when you share and you organically share, that is wonderful. So there's absolutely nothing negative. And I am very comfortable of saying, and yeah, that fragrance, the accord was, I don't know, my colleague Adriana Medina, boom, but I helped at the end, and the little twist of cardamom and blah, 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 you know, kind of helped to seal the deal. So you have to be generous, you have to be open, you have to be transparent, and you also have to acknowledge that sometimes you're so close to the perfume that you need somebody to let's even say unblock it, you know, because there's writer's blockage sometimes in perfume. Yes.
And at the moment, with all the restrictions, I don't know quite what they're like in New York, but with all the restrictions around COVID, how has that altered how you have to work? Presumably you have to present perfumes in a brand new way. Working with your colleagues presumably is totally different.
Completely
Lots like
different.
this. So what are the biggest challenges you're facing personally?
You know, from the obvious, that now, for example, we ordered 2 samples of the same thing. If you happen to be in the office and the other person is as well, okay, you sit like them to 2 ends of a conference room, you know, things that are prosaic like that. We definitely don't evaluate on skin. You know, we used to spray, you know, grab an admin or grab the guy from marketing, and then you knew
if they were good looking.
Yeah, of course, you know, that always helped, and which happens all the time, by the way. So, and then you knew, oh, you know, on her, green notes are too prevalent, and that might be difficult, etc. So the smelling on skin was something that was always very curious. It was always very photographed and you know, filmed and blah blah. So far, that is actually a little bit gone, unless you smell on you or you smell on your partner at home, etc. Sharing of the blotters can be very dangerous, and you know, something that you do automatically. So now we, you know, after, you know, starting to work normally since last June that we reopened here in New York, there has been, you know, a kind of recalibration of the mind and of the actions of how you do your daily life. The mask, you know, you have to take off the mask and smell like that. For example, I just run into my office and I smell it and I come back and give an assessment. And of course, with clients, except for very, 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 very few exceptions, it's this: is the screen, is the Zoom, is the WebEx,
And how are you finding it? So how does it make you feel having to work that way? Just
well,
something you have to deal with, or?
Yeah, there has been a void. At the beginning, there was a void. I think everybody was depressed and sad about it. Now I think we're getting used to it. And then it has been challenging because sometimes you will say, listen, right now, this is exactly what, you know, like, and then you go and brandish the arm and then you smell the arm. Those moments that enrich enormous the in the development of a fragrance, those moments are gone. However, you can still mimic them. Okay, you go 1, 2, 3, and you spray on your arm, and the client smells that, and then you kind of clown around a little bit, and then you smell it again. We do that all the time. It's challenging, but it's fun. So we are just recalibration of the brain. Perfume will always be necessary, COVID or not. So.
And do you think that with so much retail being closed all around the world, what do you have any ideas, thoughts as to what the industry could do to help itself communicating and allowing the end customer to experience perfumes that they're not doing very well at the moment?
Yeah, it's very difficult because, you know, it's like trying and failing, and, you know, the spraying and the excess of blotters in a department store, that's not going to happen. It's very difficult. I think everybody is very, very, very dubious about doing that, and at the same time, people are, which has been very surprising, and actually I've been very happy about it, to see that internet or digital purchases without smelling the perfume, you know, they have even grown. a little bit.
Definitely.
It's like, okay, I'm gonna put $150 in this one. Well, so be it, because I need a little bit of a perk. Perfume is good for the morale, So I think that's important. But I would be very disingenuous if I tell you, oh, I know the solution for that. We're still learning, and it's not even a tricycle right now.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's interesting. NPD, who I don't know if you know them, but
Yes.
they were saying just how much fragrance sales have increased, whereas cosmetic sales have really plummeted.
Yes.
But it's interesting that so many people seem to want to find escapism or reassurance or just a change through perfume, which is great news for us. But I just think that the industry is obviously trying to learn ways to adapt. So obviously this is a bit of a stupid question per se, because it's like asking the parent, which is your favorite child. So I'm not going to say which is your favorite, but is there one or some sense that you are exceptionally proud of for some reason? And if so, what is the reason for making you so proud about those particular perfumes?
Well, it's not a stupid question. Actually, it's one of the best questions, and it is the most difficult to answer. And it is, you put it right, because sometimes actually you stole the words from my mouth, because in order for me to be evasive and escape and shun the question, I say, do you ask a mother who's your favorite child? So you stole it. Thank you, Roja.
That's absolutely a pleasure. I thought I'd put you really on the spot with this one, Rodrigo.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm going to mention a couple of fragrances, because I won't disappoint the audience, of course. But I'm also quoting my sister. My sister has a 21-year-old boy, then an 18-year-old girl, and then a 15-year-old boy. And then when she has confronted this question about her children, she says, oh, I have 3. Patricio, because he's the oldest, Isabella, because she's the girl, and Nicolas, because he's the baby. So this is a perfect multi-layered answer. There are, like I said, is a perfume of mine is in the market is because I love it. It's because I put my heart, it's because I put my passion there, because I want the palpitations of my heart inside that bottle, and that's undeniable. It is my drive, it is my heart, it is my passion, it is my knowledge, it is my pride, it is also my Mexicanism inside there. So, that is absolutely out of the question in every single one of the other day, a friend of mine who works at Givaudan and marketing, she was counting the fragrances that I have made.
How many have you made?
Sorry, embarrassment of riches, but it's almost, it's around 500, So some of them limited edition, some of them, short runs, let's call them like that. And some of them, of course, very, very, thankfully, very popular. But there's fragrances that I, go back to them, and definitely Clinique Happy is very important, because it's kind of okay, it is my Pleistocenic, my Jurassic, my primal fragrance in the history of my life. And also because we proposed something that was at the time quite new, this kind of very transparent orange juice story, and utilizing parts of the citrus that were considered not perfumey, more food-like, and then kind of contrasting with very transparent and sparkling florals.
Creating sorry to interrupt you, but creating something which was the biggest selling perfume in the world.
Yes, at that time, well, it was.
Yeah.
And so, and also because it's eloquent. It speaks exactly what it is. It is what you see, what you get. It smells happy. Yeah. And I thought enormously about my sister creating that perfume, and my sister is one of the happiest persons you will ever meet. So I cannot not mention that. I also enjoyed enormously working on Black Cashmere by Donna Karan. It is a fragrance that it is not here, but it is not forgotten. It has been, it was a very complicated process, and also because I was using somehow a little bit of some, if you would call it, not Middle Eastern inspiration, but some leitmotifs that were connected to that thing. And then September 11th happened, so there was a recalibration of the notes, etc. But without even having oud inside the fragrance, it had been written about as being a proto oud kind of perfume, and and also the process working with Karen Curry was absolutely phenomenal. You know, sometimes it's very difficult to mention fragrances and not to mention others. You know, there's also agreements with companies about, you know, paternities and all that. But I feel actually, you know, free to talk about that perfume, because I think it initiated a little bit of a darkness and an elegant opaqueness in perfume that I think it's just still extremely relevant, and I feel very, very proud, very proud of it. And just to mention three, because of you know, of the three children of my sister, I really need to think about it. But there's maybe a space to say the best is yet to come.
Obviously, that goes without saying. When you look at just mentioning the thing, like with Clinique Happy, I mentioned the fact, because some people might not know it, that when it was launched, it became the biggest selling perfume in the world at that time. When you launch fragrances or collections of fragrances, like for example, the Dolce & Gabbana Velvet collection, which I think this year is 10 years old.
Yes, and a new introduction is coming to anniversary it. Yes.
A new introduction, so there's a new perfume coming to that collection.
Like the anniversary, the 10th year anniversary, like it will be presented very, very soon. And it is my baby, so I'm very proud of it. Yes.
And so does that, how does that make you feel? I mean, it must be very difficult. Is it difficult? I don't know. When you have something like Clinique Happy, which I'm sure is still a very, very big seller internationally, but you know, was number one. And then
I don't think that was number one, but it was really up there. It was also
in my opinion,
it
it's
was
number one.
Maybe for 5 minutes, but anyway, it was still up there, you know. Yeah.
Even for 1 minute, it was right up there. But by the nature of how perfumery is, obviously everything is cyclic and things are successful and then they're not so successful. When you have collections like you just talked about the Velvet collection, Dolce & Gabbana, how do you go about launching something within a collection that's established like that for something like you've just said, 10th anniversary? What's the process? What's the thought process?
That actually was a little bit of an accidental happy moment, you know, using the word happy again. But the Velvet collection, you know, the original 13 fragrances, I want to say 13 or 14 fragrances are my babies. Then they diversified a little bit, both for the 10th anniversary and, you know, they came back to me because this, you know, I'm part of the story. And it came out of actually a very, very, very strong desire of one of the two gentlemen that come from the brand to create a perfume that had a very specific patchouli note inside. And I had made a little pitch to the license holder at the time of the fashion brand in order to create these fresh waters and with different specific themes. And it was very appreciated, but at the same time, they really wanted to do something very like more ominous, bigger, stronger, chunkier in character. So they thought about the patchouli. I was given 24 hours to deliver. That was really, really hard. And they loved it. So that fragrance actually was sold with no modifications. I still go like, wow, that never happens. And then he said, well, listen, why don't you take that approach of doing something really strong and chunky, and then you transform the things that you gave us into strong and chunkies. Mm-hmm. And that was the word that we were using, like make it chunkier, you know. I like the word chunky. It's kind of a good, it's a fun word. And suddenly we found ourselves with these themes: a chunky carnation, a chunky orange flower, a chunky, you know, jasmine, white floral, gardenia story, a chunky vetiver, the patchouli was the chunky, and then a chunky wood. And that was the first, the 6 original ones. And then the inspiration came from them each time. I would get assignments. We want the smell of cypress. We, of course, want a bergamot. Mimosa came into the story. Rose came into the story. Leather came into the story, of course, and so on. So then it became a beautiful panoply of perfumes that had a relationship with the brand, had a relationship with their modus vivendi and their modus existi, which was Sicily, Italy, the Mediterranean, but at the same time Milan, fashion, glamour, and animal prints, fruit, and so on. So each one of them talked about those kind of things, and it was a language that, you know, I kind of knew how to speak. So it has still a very nice run, etc. And they diversified it. They talked to other perfumers, to other suppliers, but then they came back to me because we have to revisit this. And you are basically you wrote the hieroglyphs for this exactly.
Yeah, you wrote the story. I want to tell you a little tiny anecdote, which I hope can relate to you. I have a wonderful friend of mine, is a painter, and I bought one of his paintings because I just fell in love with it. And his wife turned around and said to me, "I'm so pleased you bought that because now it's finished." Because it was a painting he just couldn't leave alone. He was always doing little things. My question to you is, how do you know when a perfume is finished?
Have you and I talked about this? Because I do have a very, very, very specific philosophical commentary about this. So, and I'm going to say exactly what I said when that beautiful perfume exhibit happened in Lausanne and then in Shanghai, the Ne exhibit, and I was honored because I was invited to participate. And I said, Father Kronos, only time makes the perfume finish. And because it is true that every single perfume you want to revise, you want to take a look again, maybe I should lower the lemon, maybe I should put more patchouli, and so on. And for this, I have two anecdotes, and I tell them because it's I think it's very eloquent and talks about precisely this particular part of the perfumer letting go, like your friend painter, is Pierre Bonnard. Pierre Bonnard, a Nabi painter, very well known in his lifetime, a millionaire. He died a millionaire. He was considered living treasure of France when only France would do that, as Claude Monet, Matisse, and so on. And in his rather old age, he was given a national homage, and he was extremely, I don't want to use the word anal because I don't really like that word to describe it, but he was really like into the detail, like there's nothing. So he demanded for him to choose the typography and to be very involved with the invitation and the color of the walls and how to hang them and the color of the frames and what was the height level in order to put the cedula, describing the painting. He was an absolute nightmare to do this national homage in the Grand Palais with the man alive. Anyway, so the opening of the show with the president is going to happen on the Wednesday, 7 p.m. And the show is completely hung, perfect, pristine. A guard walking through the Grand Palais at 4 a.m. in the morning of that day suddenly hears some noise, something happening, and he goes to the room. And what does he see? Pierre Bonnard, full on with his palette and his brush, retouching a painting that he had completed 50 years before.
Wow.
So that is called the Bonnard syndrome. And I think perfumers do suffer from that because sometimes the modification that is chosen by the client is not particularly your favorite, but you just have to comply. And the other anecdote, talking about one of my heroes, Gian Lorenzo Bernini, he was a genius. And one of the things that put him really, really in the stratosphere in history was creating this fabulous fountain of the Four Rivers in the Piazza Navona. Mm-hmm. To great success, to great effect. He befriended the Pope because the Pope was upset at him. It was just a big, big success. The Pope gave a model of that fountain to Louis XIV. It was a big thing. Well, it is said that at his old age, if he would be riding his carriage through the Piazza Navona, he would just grab the rim of his cape and put it over his face. This is in a very Bernini manner, of course. And he would say, how did I do so poorly?
Okay, so talking about creation, I know that you have a very lovely anecdote to do with your sister and your godson.
Yes, absolutely.
And it was Mary Kay. Velocity. Maybe, do you mind to share that story?
Absolutely. Well, that is an enormously proud moment of mine, because, you know, we're working for the brief for Mary Kay, this very big American company, you know, based in Dallas that works in, you know, empowering women, and, you know, it's very Southern. Let's not get into politics, but I'm just saying that, and so on and so forth. And then they wanted to do, you know, Mary Kay at the moment was considered a little bit ladylike, you know, maybe too fluffy, and so on. So they wanted to do something really modern, with a lot of drive, with new innovative notes, with freshness, and so on and so forth. Anyway, so we were 7 companies briefed, but I make this little concoction that I call the banana tree flower, and they got hooked by it. And we run with it, and boom, 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 boom. And the working name was called Endorphin, with an E at the end to make it a little bit like more girly. And Endorphin just flew. And after a long process, we won the project. And we got the phone call from Mary Kay, let's say on a Tuesday, but on the Friday, I was flying to Mexico in order to be with my sister, who was 9 months pregnant, and she has to have C-section. So the 3 babies were very, very programmed to the minute. Actually, when she learned that she had to deliver through a C-section, she called me and said, because it was always said, you're going to be the godson, the godfather, sorry. So she called and said, so listen, you know, there's 3 options, this date, or this date. You can choose. And said, well, you know, Saturday, October the 16th at 9 a.m. And we also kind of talk with the idea, let's call an astrologist to see how it is happening. Not that we believe in that, but we were just kind of curling the curl. So I come to Mexico with the news that I had won this important contract with a company that was so important, so big, and so on, and with a perfume that also, it was so like beautiful and sparkling and joyful, etc., etc. And she smelled it, and she absolutely fell in love. So what did she do? You know, talking about somebody being in sync, you know, with the emotion, etc. She wore Velocity to give birth to that little baby, whose gender we didn't know, because every single time that they did an ultrasound, etc., he covered his parts. So we discovered it was a boy, that I was going to have a godson the moment he was born. And my sister is covered in Velocity by Mary Kay. So it is absolutely phenomenal, because like I said, now Patricio is 21, so Velocity is kind of going to turn 20 this year. And guess what? You know, not that I'm revealing a lot, but there's going to be a 20th anniversary celebration for that perfume.
And for your godson.
And for my godson, yeah. Because Mary Kay took 1 year to prepare the launch. So yes, it's a wonderful story.
It's a gorgeous story. And I think it's a very unusual but perfect example of how we all know perfumes about memory and association.
Absolutely.
And this, I think, is one of the most original stories, unusual stories ever, of how a perfume can be so wrapped up in the memory of somebody. He literally was born with your perfume on.
Yes, in the big convention where Velocity was introduced, was presented, and you know, this in the Astrodome or the Rose Dome, one of the big chunky stadiums in Dallas. So I told the story. I made everybody cry, and by everybody, I'm telling you, 5,000 ladies crying. You know, so it was.
Golly. How do so with one of the things that I find very interesting is a lot that's written to do with reworks of formulas due to changes in legislation, like the new amendment, 49th IFRA amendment is coming. Very often when things are written, I think they can be written in a very negative way, as if the companies are all up to no good, or, you know, as if they're trying to cheat people, and I think the story isn't always as round as it should be, if that makes sense. If one of the creations is a creation of yours, how does it normally work? Are you the perfumer who's asked to make the modifications? The team do it, and you have final say in it?
It's all of the challenges. It's all of the above. You know, it's something that we have to cope with. You know, it would be a little bit, you know, too simple to say, okay, now, you know, black oil paint is banned, etc. So now take it out from the Mona Lisa. It's not exactly how it works, because that's not exactly how it works. There have also been some kind of a little bit more of a resisting position of let's refuse to do it, blah blah. We just can't, because legislation and agreements about sustainability, availability, something that has a political problem in supply. There's many levels, and we cannot deny. It's the elephant in the room, and the elephant is there. So all of the scenarios that you mentioned are in place. Sometimes I do the change if it's very automatic to do, and or sometimes you give your ideas, but we have a specialized team who takes care of that, and we are in contact with them, etc. And then you smell the little options, and then you go, this could work, etc. So we do it as a team, and sometimes it has to go so fast, etc., that you don't even know, and the team took upon itself, etc. And then, okay, if for revision, boom. So it is also the blessing of working for such an important big perfume company like Givaudan, that we have all of these weapons available, and it is a daily thing now. That's the way it is.
Yeah. So what do you think the industry could do if you think we have new generations of people who will become perfumers and who will shape our industry in the future? I think that lots of people who like the idea of becoming a perfumer maybe don't really understand what they need to do, what that entails. Yeah. So what advice, I have two questions that are related. What advice would you give somebody who likes the idea and wants to become a perfumer? And the second question, which is sort of interrelated, is do you think the industry could do more, and if so, what, to try to help young people enter our industry? Because it is a very, very difficult industry for people to get into, I think. The perception of it is certainly that, and I think the reality for most people is that it's very difficult too.
Well, to talk about advice, and it's not like, okay, my God, I am a sage and I am, like in the Oracle of Delphi, telling people things like that.
I always thought you were. That's why I asked the question.
I was born old, I know, but anyway. No, I certainly have two pieces of advice, and one of them actually they have to do with things that I think have to be characteristics of a perfumer. One of them I already talked about. It is like, learn to listen. That is very important. Learn to listen. Your ears have to be pointed like a fawn, or like a desert rabbit or a fennec. I always picture this big, the fox with the big ears. Like that is very important. So that is a piece of advice. And the second one is, and I'm not going to say be that, was like, I'm going to use a little adage. Patience reaches everything. Patience achieves it all. And that is actually an embroidery that was hanging next to my grandmother's bed since I was born. And it is true. If you are not patient, you cannot be a perfumer. And it comes from, little feats of patience, meaning that you wrote a perfume, you need to wait a little bit for that perfume to be prepared, to also being patient with the process, with patient with a project, with being patient with a client, be patient with a shifting market, with a shifting world. If you are impatient, if you cannot sit still and wait, don't choose perfumery as your life, because you will be in despair. Because also you need to be very resilient. You need to learn to be disappointed. You need to cope with that kind of sadness, because like I said, you win 1% of the time. So those are my two pieces of advice. Listen and learn how to wait. That's very important.
A bit like finding a lover, really.
Yes, or like Jean Patou would say very famously, good perfume is exactly like good men. They are very difficult at the beginning, but you learn how to love them.
And the other part of that question was, do you think the industry could do more?
Well,
to
yes.
help people who want to enter into it? Because
The
I
answer,
think there's
the answer is yes.
yeah.
But at the same time, it is, I would be also, I would be a little bit silly telling you, oh, we do a lot. We do a lot, but at the same time, we don't do enough. But at the same time, it is also, because it's the nature of the beast, it is a little bit of a hermetic industry. It is. A very good friend of mine, this English guy, he always says there are more astronauts than there are perfumers in the world, and I take a little bit of pride there. But I don't want to be a snob either. I can be very snobbish, but I don't want to be a snob. But also I have to say very clearly, just like a violinist or a prima ballerina, not everybody is born, to be the next Anna Pavlova. It's like so there's moments, and there's people who try so hard, but some people, just kind of and at the same time, for example, in the case of Givaudan, we have a historically famous school of perfumery, and it has begat some of the most important perfumers in the world, dead and alive. So I want to say there is a lot done. It could be twice as much, yes, but at the same time, the industry is quite small. So unfortunately, there is no space for everything. For example, in my own particular case, I am the only Mexican. And, I am regarded, and this is not perfectly true, but I am sometimes regarded as the only Latin American. This is not true, but sometimes people write about that and we're like, no, not exactly. I can mention you other names, but anyway. But I'm the only Mexican for sure that works in the international arena of fine fragrance creation. I'm the only one. So I've been asked, do you feel lonely? Yes. Do you want to share? Yes. Well, at the same time, I don't hear any knocks in my door, so. And it's not that tomorrow I need to have 79 people knocking on my door. It's not that. That is not my point. The point is like, there's more to be done. Yes, but we do a lot.
And then thinking of your legacy, though, in 50 years' time, when somebody ends up talking about Rodrigo Flores-Roux, what would you like to be remembered for professionally?
Wow. Okay. Oh, by the way, we did not mention that these questions were never disclosed to me.
Oh, so. No, I asked Rodrigo if he would trust me just to do this as I thought the questions up, because I thought it was more spontaneous.
Well, something that, I'm just, coming up out of the sleeve with this question and said, wow, he was a lot of fun, but his passionate approach was a pain in the butt.
I'd agree with that. Yeah. And what would you say you would like to be remembered for personally?
That I
Same.
think well, yeah, we could repeat it. No, but I think that I make emotional perfume, and that my perfumes communicate emotion and feeling and love, and because I made them with love. So and I've been told that already, so that's good.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think anyone who if someone knows you, they feel your spirit in your creations. That's what I think. I have a question that somebody sent in. Melissa has asked, do you always start creating a fragrance with base notes, or do you blend any raw materials together to begin with, regardless of where they sit in the composition?
Interesting question, because, it's a very, I'm going to use the word with intention, it's very formulaic. Actually, no. Let's start with two disparate elements, regardless of if they are top notes or base notes, or if the brief is calling for something quite sexy, quite heavy, of course you will be starting with, headier things, etc. But no, it's just like a duo. I believe in duos. I believe in trios of things happening. I like it. I like number threes, the multiple of three. My birthday is March the 9th, so it's a lot of threes happening there. And triangles kind of talk to me. So I like, the juxtaposition of a triangle and not a duo. So I work in triangles mostly, and at the same time, but it doesn't have to obligatorily obey to the top note, hard note, background note exactly. It could be one of each, it could be all of them.
Okay. Somebody's asked another question, which sort of leads me into a piece of information, which is, I know that you very kindly have said that you are going to work on a fragrance, especially for the people who have joined us this evening. I know that it's work in progress. It's something you're working on. But the question I have is, tell us about the fragrance you've created for tonight. So that's a very straightforward and direct question.
It is 90% done. It is a little bit of a COVID casualty because it was supposed to be ready last year, and then you know the Red Sea came upon us. But it is. I love flowers, you know, so there's no accident that my last name is Flores. And I wanted to, okay, let's revisit something that I have always been very intrigued, which is the datura flower, the angel trumpet. And because it's not jasmine, it's not rose, it's not tuberose, it's not lily of the valley, it's not gardenia, etc. It's something that is unexplored or is explored, you know, just like the tip of the iceberg. So I worked looking at several really heavy-duty headspace analysis of several species of daturas, some of them Indian, some of them from the Wild West country here in the United States, and some of them in Mexico, because it is also a plant that is originally from Mexico. So I made an accord that smelled exactly like that flower, and because it's very heavy indolic animalic, but it's also very citrusy and very sparkling, but not like magnolias, very different, because that magnolia is another animal. It's great to call a flower an animal. It's great. And so I started with that, and then, you know, I kind of enriched it with more, not traditional, because the flower extras I use are very like tip of the arrow, new distillations, new processes, etc. But I wanted to do a very big, rich floral. And originally I called it Dangerous Datura. My friend Linda Key from the foundation and Alison Harrington, who you know, my dear friend, she was like, no, nobody wants to deal with danger right now. So we ended up calling it Devilish Datura. I like the two Ds, the alliteration is nice. So yes, the fragrance is going to come very soon. Like I said, it's receiving its final touches, and then we need to actually physically make it. Right now, there's this tiny little amount of it, and it will come your way, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Before I hand back to Linda, I would like to say an enormous thank you to you, not just for giving your time this evening, but for everything you do to enrich our industry and all the people's lives you touch. I know, having known you for a very long time, I know you're incredibly generous of spirit, very kind and remarkably supportive. The industry could do with many more Rodrigo Flores-Roux, but I'm very pleased to say there is only one of you. And it's been my enormous privilege to fulfill this dream. And I just thank you very much. And I will pass you now back to Linda.
Well, the pleasure is mine, and that is my aim. And I receive your words with a very warm heart. Thank you, Roja.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you, Rodrigo and Roja. It's been a fabulous evening listening to you, and it's certainly lifted my spirits for sure. A huge thank you to Givaudan for helping to put this all together, and a huge thank you to everyone that's joined us this evening, because your support, it just means so much to us. It really allows us to support the fragrance industry with our training, recognition, and really helps us to engage with consumers on how important fragrance is in all of our lives. So please check out our events page. It's on our website. You'll find all of the details about more events. And just to say, you know, Rodrigo, it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you. Roja, I've known you for 20 years. And I love you dearly. So cheers to both of you. And thank you so much. And good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.